When Doug Lynam was 22, he decided to leave the Marines to become a monk. While in the monastery, Doug realized his community was under an avalanche of debt. As Doug helped monastery friends with their finances, he knew he had the tools to get people on the right track financially. In 2015, Doug started his own company, and after 20 years, left the monkhood in 2016. In his book, From Monk to Money Manager, Doug offers his rules of money management and how to end your financial suffering by becoming a little bit wealthy.
Well, Doug Lynam joins us now. Doug, thank you so much for being here with us.
Ashley.
We're talking about money. It's a topic maybe some of us don't want to talk about, but we need to talk about it,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Well, first things first, talk about how your family viewed money and how that really compelled you to change.
Yeah, I think my family, they weaponized money. So it was a tool that was used to manipulate and control behavior, right? And you know, it was a divorce and multiple marriages in my family. And so children were sort of used as bullets in a financial battle of the sexes, really. And that really, I think, became toxic over time. And so in an act of rebellion, really, I ran off to a monastery in part to kind of annoy my parents and piss them off. And it worked really well for a while. But then, of course, as you said in your promo, there were some real financial struggles there in the monastery.
Yeah, definitely. Well, take us back. So first you became a Marine.
Yes.
And then, spoiler alert, you became a monk.
Correct.
So how did that transpire?
Well, it was in college that I started to think very deeply about my vocation for life. And I loved my time in the Marine Corps. It was a brilliant adventure and really a phenomenal experience for me. But I thought there was a higher calling, and I was always looking to be of service in the world. And so I think the Marines was one form of service, and then being in the monastery was yet another form of service.
So when you became a monk, what did you discover about the monastery's financial status?
Well, after a couple of years in, the phone was ringing off the hook from creditors looking for their money. And so I think we were under the false notion that money was the root of all evil. We all sort of hated money. We all kind of ran into, when you have a community where everyone hates money, it's not going to work out well, right? It's going to have a problem down the road. And eventually that came back to bite us in the backside. And so I really had to figure out what's a healthy way to address the issue of money so you don't fall into sort of the greed or the avarice or the abusive relationship that I saw in my family growing up, and you don't track to the other extreme, which is if you're ignoring or hating money, because that's not going to work out well. Right? So maybe to put it simply is that hating the world is never a path to God, right? And so hating the material around us is not really the spiritual adventure. And so how do you bring those two worlds together of material and spiritual?
So how important is it to live below your means? You talk about that in the book.
It's critical, right? So so one of the funny things about my story is that my father was a very wealthy CEO, and then he went broke, right? After I left the monastery, he lost all of his money as well, because he wasn't, even with a very, very high salary, and you see it in celebrities and athletes all the time, where people who are making millions of dollars, but if you don't live below your means, it doesn't matter what your income level is, you're always going to be broke.
Definitely, yeah. Well, talk about how you talk about in the book, you need to run from credit.
Yes.
So, talk about that and how important that is.
Well, so credit is you're basically spending someone else's money, and they're going to want that money back, and they're going to want it back with a lot of interest. So there can be healthy debt. So you can, like a mortgage or student loans done responsibly and modestly can be fine. But credit cards are just the thing that most people get, they're a stumbling block that most of us run into at some point. And if you don't manage your credit wisely and you don't run away from it, frankly, it can really, really devastate your financial future and create tremendous suffering for you and suffering for the ones that you love.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like a lot of people, the average person, may not know how to invest sustainably. So what are some ways that we can do that?
Yeah, so when you're investing, you want to align your investments with your values. So, my belief is that investing for the future while destroying the future makes no sense. So we need to protect God's creation, and we need to do that responsibly. And there are a lot of great, most mutual fund companies now have some socially responsible option or environmentally sustainable option. The resources out there are tremendous. There's no shortage of opportunities there to invest ethically, but you just need to be mindful of it, right? When you're investing, you need to actually make sure your values are reflected in those investments. And as long as you're having that mindful conversation with your advisor or whatever service provider you're using, you should be in pretty good shape.
Yeah. And you also emphasize the importance of giving back. But I also heard that you don't like to use that term, so talk about that.
Well, I mean, it's sort of the term giving back implies you've taken, right? And so I think we've earned our money. We've worked hard for it, and so we should be proud of that. But we also need to use our money as a tool for love and service in the world, because that's our calling, right? Is to be of greater love and be of greater service. So there's this sort of so to take the sort of the guilt and the shame out of it of building your wealth ethically, if you do that, because I think a lot of our notions around money, to your point, is that there's this idea that somehow wealth is zero sum, that by building my wealth, I've somehow created poverty for another person, which is incorrect. In a modern economy, wealth is no longer zero sum. My wealth does not come at the expense of someone else. It's more like going to the gym, right? If I go to the gym and work out and I diet and exercise, does not prevent you from doing the same. And building my wealth ethically doesn't prevent you from doing that. And so when we do that responsibly, then I think we do have an obligation to give back, but it's also just a wider form of love.
Yeah, definitely. Well, before you go, what is the #1 tip that you would give for anybody of any age, my age, a little bit older? What's your #1 tip for finances?
For finances, you need a budget. It's really simple, but I meet so many people at all ages who don't have a budget. And if you don't do that, it's a painful step. No one likes doing it. But I think one of the great things now is technology allows us to have so many tools that will automate the process for you without you needing to be scared of the math. I think I was a mathematics and science teacher for many years, and people think I'm bad at math, I'm bad at numbers, and that's really just your ego looking for an excuse, because technology handles all of that now. It's not a math problem, it's a mindfulness problem. And so if you can be mindful of your money, mindful of your budget, it's the first step to being a little bit wealthy.
Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Doug. Doug's book is called From Monk to Money Manager, and it's available now wherever books are sold. I highly recommend it for my fellow millennials and anyone a little bit older too. So thanks so much, Doug.
Thanks.